Hello there, welcome. In today's video, we are going to be revisiting setups as they have once again become quite important with the changes confidence. I'm going to explain why that is in a minute. But basically, this video is going to be about setups. It's going to be a little bit of a guide on how you can do them manually, by simming, and also by using external tools to help you out, and why I think is very important. So with that said, let's just get into it. If you find this video helpful, I would appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. That would help me out a ton. And with that, let's just jump into why setups are important. Now, the reason why setups have become far more important is because of the confidence changes, where a driver's confidence will slowly return to a starting point. In this case, you can see that Yamamoto has a starting point of very high, and Albon has a starting point of medium because we destroyed his setup purposefully. But generally, if you have a good engineer relationship with your driver, the lowest level they should start at is high. This is just if you have a new driver. It's especially important if you have a new driver-engineer relationship. But if they have the highest level of, buddyship, friendship, it shouldn't be as big of a deal. Now, the main reason why is going to be your confidence buffs your driver stats, which actually has a pretty huge factor in the course of a race in terms of pace. But the other main reason is actually the chance of incident. And as you can see here for Yamamoto, that is low. But for Albon, it is medium. And the reason why, if I could just get back over, and the reason why that chance of incident being medium is bad is because this means he's more likely to crash, lock up, spin, anything really. And he will trend back to that medium point. And also, again, if you had a bad relationship with his engineer, if they just, go paired together, he might even fall down into the red zone if you're unlucky. So, as such, setups are incredibly important, particularly with a new engineer relationship with your driver, to avoid crashes. That's really the biggest one. The extra pace is nice and all, but crashing and incidents is going to be the big one. When it comes to manual setups, there are kind of two ways to do this. Basically, we do them without any additional tools, which kind of gives us this as a starting point. Or we use the tools to give us a starting point like this. We're going to go more deeply into how the tool works a little bit later on. But basically, this gives us a decent enough starting point. I'll show you exactly why after we do the first run. But if we don't know, there's no point in really changing anything before we go in because, well, we're going to be trying to find the sweet spot anyways. But let's go ahead and get this manual practice and manual setup underway. There's a couple of things here we do want to do after practice has started, which basically has to do with other aspects, not really the setup itself, and that is we want to run conserve. We want to run conserve on both of these for the tires to make them last longer. Now, we do need to send two compounds back after each practice session, so in this case we would send the hard and another one, as soft if we don't use another tire. So you can use several tires, you can run normal, that's fine. It's actually not a problem. But we're running conserve also here to slow ourselves down a little bit extra. Now, we're running conserve also in the engine to limit the degradation. Basically, the less temperature you put into the engine, the slower it degrades. So we do this to save a little bit of durability. I'm going to keep the ERS on neutral. You can put it on harvest, but I don't think it really matters much. It's going to be up to you though. Putting it on harvest is going to slow you down a little bit extra as well. Next up, we want to avoid high-risk curbs, driving clean air, and don't fight teammates. This one's pretty self-explanatory. We avoid damage. We cool down the car even more. And we try and avoid our two teammates from, well, destroying each other. So that's kind of what we're going to try and do here. Let's get that first setup sorted. Once your drivers get the setup sorted after about 18, 15, 20 minutes into the session, we're going to go ahead and call both cars in, and we are going to take a look at how good those setups actually are. And we're basically going to be changing the setups here, trying to find a better one. For Yamamoto, who we already have used a little bit of a cheat code on here, we can see that we already hit a 90% setup satisfaction. That makes our job a lot easier, as now we basically just need to find the perfect sweet spots. And to do that, we're basically just jiggling things in slightly different direction. I'm just going to do front wing first there because it's going to take very, very quick to configure. If you configure anything else, it's going to take a lot longer. So we want to figure out the front wing first and then work from there. Now for Albon, he's going to have a little bit of a harder job ahead of him here because we had nothing to go on. So we've only hit 9% setup satisfaction here. And that does give us a little bit of a hard job. So what I would do here as a general rule of thumb, when I don't know, is to start on the premise that what I'm going to try and get kind of done here is try to get as many sliders towards the middle as possible. And that is kind of what I've tried to sort here. We have the front wing angle as low as it can go. We have the rest in the middle. And basically we want to do a run with this to try and sort out any other outliers. Now, this is going to take a lot longer, over 4 minutes, compared to the half minute for Yamamoto. So we'll just allow both cars to do another run to collect feedback. Now, here's something that can also happen when you're doing your setups, and that is that you get a red flag. And that is going to basically take away a lot of your ability to get your setups done. In this case, we lost about 20 minutes, which is a third of the session. And this is something you'll have to contend with, particularly when it comes to sprint weekends. It's going to make your life very, very difficult. And if we take a look at the setup now for Albon, we have an optimal here, we have a great here, we have two basically good ones. That means that in the second practice here, we'd still just try and keep these two in the middle. Probably not this one, because we know kind of where we need to go, either to the right or to the left. For the front wing here, this is also perfectly acceptable. It's not great that we're doing it like this, I'm gonna be honest, but since we're already all the way there, let's just try it. And for Yamamoto here, we just keep the setup as is. So as you can see, using a cheat code, so to speak, or a guide, if you will, depending on how you look at it, can make your life insanely easier. And that's kind of why I'm going to go over it later. This is basically how you'd have to set up for the sprint weekend. We'd probably have to, again, just either gamble or play it safe. After you're done with the sprint, you can change your setup again, so I wouldn't bother too much about it. But manually, you are going to have a little bit more work cut out for you if you don't use a tool to help you out. Next up, let's take a look at simming. When it comes to simming practice to figure out the setup, I can't really recommend this on sprint weekends because generally we're going to be doing the same thing that we did with the manual one where we start in the middle. Unless, of course, we have a guide to follow. I'm just going to do the middle one here to kind of show you that you can still get a pretty good setup even if you don't use it. And what we're going to want to do here is simulate individual sessions. You can do all of them, but individual sessions are going to give you more freedom to change these up between each session. And as you can see here, we're going to follow the principles of last time around, where we try and get as close to the middle as possible. And from there, we make a decision to go either left or right if we're good. And that's kind of what we've done here. So this is good enough for me here for a simulation setting. We're not going to try and min-max basically this early on. We just want to try and find, excuse me again, that sweet spot. And I'm kind of happy with this. Looks okay to me. This one's probably a little bit too far to the right, but as I mentioned, we have 3 sessions. It's not really a huge deal. You might feel like I'm doing this a little bit haphazardly, but this works pretty well most of the time, so I wouldn't worry too much. Okay, here we are. We're getting into a very good spot. We have 2 optimals. We kind of know where this one needs to go. We need to be actually in the middle. For this one, we don't know. But basically, just move this one either direction. Move this one a little bit more to the right. And try and keep the optimals where they are as best as we can. So this is what I would try with Albon. For Yamamoto, we still have one we don't know. Move either right or left. We're going to move it to the right here. Try that. Adjust that one slightly. Get the optimal back where it should be. And this looks good enough to simulate into the 3rd session. Sorry, into quali. And that's generally how I would do it on any track days on a sprint weekend. As I said, on a sprint weekend, you are going to end up with a really, really bad setup if you simulate. Probably around 50 to 60%. So I can't really recommend it. For Albon here, this should be pretty simple. Just 1 flick or 2 even to the left. And he should now have basically 100% setup. For Yamamoto, it's going to be a little bit trickier. But basically, we do something like this. And honestly, that looks good enough. As long as you're above 90%, I'd say you should be happy. I am just going to simulate the session here so we can actually see the numbers that we're getting. And 96 and 99, so I missed a little bit. Should have gone 1 more to the right here. But basically, you get an idea. Simulating practice can be quick and efficient, and you can still get a really, really good result. Next up, we're going to take a look at the tool for getting the baseline for your setups. Let's see what that one has to offer and how that one works. Now, lastly, I want to talk about the external tool called F1Setup.it. There's also a Steam guide that works in a very similar fashion. But basically, it gives you a good starting point for your drivers. And what this means is that when you go to a track, say we go to Bahrain at the start of the season, it'll give you starting sliders that you can then work from. Every driver does have slight differences in preferences, but those preferences doesn't change between seasons. So if you find one driver sweet spot, you can kind of note it down. And this tool actually has a way to do that. As you can see here, if let's say this was optimal for my driver, I could go optimal and next, and it'll save the setups in this handy little list down here, which is really, really good. There's also a calculator over here where you can kind of try and figure out what the inputs are. Basically, if this would be optimal, I can put an optimal here. This one too is optimal. Let's say this one's optimal. This one's just great, and this one also would be great. This one can kind of help me figure out where I'm supposed to be. So there is actually a calculator here. Find setup. As you can see, it adjusted to 0.05. Because I just put in a random one, it was unable to sort it. But basically, put in your numbers, press find setup, and it's going to help you find the setup a lot easier. And again, you can save these settings for every track, and that makes your life a whole lot easier. So it's a really, really nice online tool. If you can't and want to have an offline tool, there is a Steam guide. I'll try and link it in the description. But that was basically it for the setup guide. It's been probably a lot later than I want to make it. This winter has been harsh on my body, which has sucked. My voice is even struggling just to make this short video, as you probably heard. So yeah, I hope it was still helpful. If it was, I would appreciate if you would like and subscribe. And that is it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.